Well, thank you for coming, and it's great to have a nice group in here. And my name is Lucas Aufenkamp. I am camp director at Lakewood, and I got my phone number on there. And most all of you are credential holders, so you'd have access to that anyway. But if you're ever working on a project and want some help or ideas on how to finish it out or make it a reality, you can sure call me. And there's a couple I've worked on with other people to help them finish out, their own vision. And so I hope that I was telling someone just before. I hope that this doesn't go terribly short, because this is more of a if you've got a product or a project you're working on, and you're wanting to get it from your concept to page. That's really what we're going to talk about. It's not going to be a lot of inspirational getting through writer's block and stuff in here, even though there are some things I've tried for that. But anyway, it's great to have you with me here. I want to just mention a couple. Let's see, how do I advance this? Some projects I've worked on myself, and I have them with me here. I'm gonna do a joke later and offer to give these away in the service. I thought I'll say, I've got a $50 gift card as one of the door prizes, so I might slip that in here and say, first one up to the front gets my set of books, and then see if anybody responds, and then have a $50 gift card.
Well, now we know.
Oh, you can't come though. But yeah, I know you'll be up there right in front. Yeah. So there's some that I've worked on. The first one I did that I published as a book was it's called Convincing Proof, and I've always had an interest in kind of Christian apologetics and defending faith. And so years ago, you can see I did it in 2014. I was working on a 6 or 8 week, I guess I can tell you how many weeks. It was a 6-week sermon series on defending your faith. And my plan was I was going to print all of the notes out in a really easy to follow way. And actually, my brother-in-law said, my dad self-publishes books. You should look at that. And so I started researching it and realized it's relatively simple to do. And so I created the book, self-published it, and then the church bought copies of the book at cost. It's about $2.50 a piece. And so they just bought them at cost, gave them out as sermon guides for that series. And so I preached through the chapter, and at the end of each chapter there's a study guide, and we maybe did small groups also with it. I don't recall. The other one, I don't have it with me actually. Living as a New Creation is a discipleship study, 8-week study that I used, and actually the Williston Church is using it right now, and my dad in Drayton has some copies that he's used at different times, done some work with them in the jails and so forth. I believe, right? Taking them in and work with people. Taking the people. Yeah. So that's one that I did. So this one I did it as a like I said, to accompany a sermon series. This one I did for discipleship purposes. This one several years ago, that's 2012. I did this just for myself to capture my sermons for the whole year. So you can't buy this anywhere. I know that if you could, you'd probably get on it right away and try to buy it. But I did this just strictly for my own storage purposes. So I took all my sermons from 2012 and I put them into a book, and I just have them in my shelf. The Wind Principle is one I did 2016. And I did this one, I preached a sermon, I think it was either the first Sunday of 2012 or 2013, and I preached the sermons out of John chapter 3 verse 6. Jesus says 3:8. Jesus says the wind blows wherever it wishes. You hear the sound of it, but you can't tell where it came from or where it's going. And he says it's the same with every person born of the Spirit, that their life follows a track that's unpredictable. And I can't look at your life right now and say, well, this is your starting point. And I can't look at your life right now and say, this is where you're going to end up. because the Spirit of God is going to move you in an unpredictable way. And so I did this really because I thought it was a message that was good, that could minister to people, and it's really the only one that I tried hard, relatively speaking, to sell. So I mentioned those things because I just wanted to. There's different reasons that you might want to create a book. You might do it for personal reasons. You might do it. Oh, actually, I don't want to tip too much for our content today. This one we did, our men's ministry team did years ago, The Ultimate Man, and that was an effort. I'm seeing if anyone in here was a part of that, but Kevin Zahn, Randy Haney, John Osborne, and Sheldon McGorman. And John had approached me, John Osborne approached me on the idea, but they wrote sermons, 4 sermons on biblical masculinity, biblical manhood, and then I wrote discipleship material, or I wrote small group materials that went with it, and then I produced the book. And so the 4 guys wrote the sermons, I did the small group material, and I produced the book. And so that was kind of a joint effort. And then this one I mentioned, Making America Good Again, that was written by Dan Johnson. He is he's Matt's uncle, right? Yep. And Dan has written a number of books over the years, Come Home America, When You Ask Why, Aim for the Children, and those were books that he published through kind of a traditional publishing service. And he called me maybe it was 2017, 2016. He said, I'm interested in self-publishing and I want to know how, because he had always gone the traditional way of publishing. And so he called me asking for help. He said, prior to self-publishing, he said, whenever I would want to publish a book, I would have to, I'd have to outsource all of the work. I'd have to outsource the editing, the formatting, the cover design. And then he said I would need to put up front thousands of dollars to produce my book. And he said in the end I'd end up with 3,000 books in my garage. What do I do with all these? There's obviously a lot of risk in there. So on this one, he called me probably a dozen times over the course of him producing, maybe it's strong, 6 or 8 times, asking questions about how to publish a book himself. And that he used the primary source that Amazon owns for publishing. And it was done every bit as well, really, as anything else he had done in terms of the formatting and the appearance of it. So self-publishing didn't hurt him at all. Why publish a book? Why would you want to do it? What's your purpose? There's 4 things that I kind of look at. First, I'll just put it at the top: revenue generation. You're thinking, I got a message, and you could go out and you could work a part-time job if you're in ministry, or you might say, I've got a message that people would want to hear and would benefit by. I'm going to produce a book. I'm going to sell it. And you might just strictly say, I need to generate some revenue for my family. And there's nothing wrong with that. The Bible says that God gives us the ability to create wealth. And so there's no harm in having that as a motivation. You might publish a book to communicate an important message. That's why I did this. I thought it was a message that could minister to people, and so that's why I produced it. I mentioned the third one, to produce an organized message. That's why I did this one, because I had a message that I thought I want people to be able to understand it. If you think about apologetics, it can be like, because A is true and B is true, therefore C is true, and it can be a message that's complicated. So I wanted it to be organized and clear. The last one is an important one, I think, and it's professional satisfaction. Many of you are pastors. Others are involved in ministries that are outside the church. You might be a volunteer. But each one of us in ministry, we have a vision for what we want our ministry to look like. And you can envision it, and you say, I want to build a new church, and I want to see 300 people coming, and I want to see 7 ministries touching my community, and you have a vision, but all of us know it can be very hard to make that vision a reality. You can be highly skilled and highly anointed, and you might never see your vision become a reality, because sometimes there's things just outside of our control that limit us. So there's people, there's circumstances, there's resources. Sometimes things limit us, and the vision can take 20 years to produce. Where if you have a vision for a book and a message that can impact people's lives, you can commit 18 months, and in 18 months you can hold that vision in your hand. And there's a sense of, I think, professional satisfaction. I've created something here. I had a vision for it, I worked at it, I stuck with it, and now I'm holding it in my hands. And I think that there's some satisfaction that can come to you professionally that can offset maybe frustrations of ministry efforts. I do, one thing I really enjoy about my work at the camp is, especially in the season that we've been in, is the building part. I love it. Don't tell superintendent I said this, but I told someone the other day, if superintendent, I know, if superintendent ever told me you're never going to build another building, I'd be like, I'm out. I'm leaving. You got to give me just a little % chance of building another building, because it's so much fun to envision it, and then to lay the vision out and work with the team and see it become a reality. It's very satisfying. And there was things about the pastoral ministry that were extremely satisfying too, but there was things about it that were frustrating. And I was talking to Harold Larson, the MAPS director. I affectionately call him the Claw.
Oh.
And I like to do woodworking stuff, and Harold is a master woodworker. Stuff he creates is amazing. And I was showing him one of my projects, and he said, for pastors, that's very important to have something like that, a hobby, a skill that you can create on the side, because of the struggle sometimes of pastoring to make vision become reality. So I think publishing a book that you envision can give you a sense of ministry satisfaction that can kind of see you through some other frustrations. What are some benefits of self-publishing versus traditional publishing? Okay, what are some benefits? Well, the first one, as I illustrated from Dan Johnson, is there's zero inventory risks. Most self-publishing platforms, they'll let you publish a book and print one copy. Okay, that's all you have to print. You don't have to print any. You can publish it. You can take it from start to finish and purchase one copy. There's zero inventory risks. When I did the Win Principle, I would buy 100 copies at a time, and so I'd sell 100 copies or give them away or whatever, and then I'd buy another 100 copies, and so I never carried any risk. Like Dan Johnson told me, he would start out by buying 3,000 copies. Well, what if your book's a dud? Well, now 3,000 copies at probably $4 a piece at the time, you're in it for $12,000. And if you sell them at $10 a piece, you're doing okay. But if it's a dud, you're swallowing all those losses. So traditional or self-publishing, you can buy one copy, and that's all you ever have to buy. There's zero risk in terms of inventory. There's zero production costs. It doesn't. I can sit down from start to finish, and other than my time, there is zero cost to produce. I didn't put a penny into producing this book, except I think I paid $10 for the background image. That's all. That was the limit of the production cost. Now, it depends on your skills. This isn't like, oh my goodness, the skills are so amazing there. It depends on your skills in terms of you and we'll talk about this, but there's editing, there's formatting, there's cover design, editing, formatting, cover design, and then the distribution, promotion. If you're able to do all of that yourself, you don't have to put a penny into self-publishing. So there's zero production cost. It's a great way to do it. If you go through traditional sources of publishing where you're not doing the work yourself, you're going to have to put out money at each step. And there's increased royalties. So I really think, and we'll talk about this, there is nothing wrong with trying to make money on what you're doing when you're creating something. And any traditional publishing approach, there's gonna be a middleman in the process who's draining your royalties. Okay, it's not just royalties, but if you have a vision to create a book that is only for giveaway, it's going to cost you a lot more to publish it in traditional formats. Whereas you self-publish, I can get this book for $2.50. Well, $3 with shipping. I can have it at my house for $3 a copy. So, whereas if I was working through a traditional source, I'd be paying at different steps, and I'd be paying more per copy too. So, a lot of benefits to it that are real and significant. When I was after I had produced this, I was trying to find a way to market it. And I actually contacted, think of the guy's name. He did Ministers of Richmond 8 years ago. It doesn't matter so much, but he has done some books. We're giving away one of them today or tomorrow. I can't remember his name, but he had written some books. I contacted him, and he said, contact Kevin Peckett. He said Kevin Peckett used to be the head of marketing for the Assemblies of God, so contact Kevin Peckett. So I called him and I contacted him somehow. And I sent him to my website that I had created. I showed him the link to the Amazon product page, and he called me. He said, "You've done a really good job so far, and really you've done well." He said, "I'm willing to help you," and he said, "I can help you get it through some of the traditional distribution sources like ChristianBook.com." And I was excited, and then he took a job at Charisma Ministries, and I never heard from him again. He never followed up. But one thing he told me, he said the best known Assembly of God authors, and we could add Jeffrey Portman into this, Scott Wilson, Wilfredo Choco de Jesus, Rob Ketterling, we'll leave out Mark Batterson for a moment. But he said the best known Assembly of God authors make 80% of their sales by speaking engagements. He said there may be 20% by online sales, word of mouth sales, people just shopping online. They're not selling their book because they're online. They're selling it because they know people and because they're speaking at events and they're taking their books. And I can speak from experience. When I first wrote this, I did a workshop at Men's Retreat on Christian apologetics, actually. And John Osborne said, "You can sell your book if you want." So I took it. I sold 70 copies on 1 week in the Men's Retreat, where for all of my efforts, I sold 300 of them. So that one speaking engagement, I sold 70 copies of the book. And so the reason I bring this up, and Kevin Peckett told me, he said even Mark Batterson is selling at least 50% of his sales, his books, at speaking engagements. So we think, like each one of us thinks, I have to get a publishing deal. I've got to get a hold of Zondervan. I've got to get a hold of Baker. And it's just not true. When you're starting out like me, like I have been, and I haven't honestly worked on a project since I left, since I came to the camp. I have worked on them. I honestly have felt like my critical thinking skills have struggled since I've not been disciplined to write a sermon every week. I felt like I haven't been able to produce thoughts the way I used to, which before they were really good thoughts. But we all think I got to get a hold of these publishing services, and it's just not true. The best way to start is by self-publishing, and if you write a book and it's great, you're going to be able to sell it by self-publishing it. And if it's really good and it sells really good, you can get connected with a traditional publishing house to outsource some of those tasks. But you don't have to start with a publishing house. I tried with this. I tried to reach a book agent, and in fact I did get a response from one, and I sent him all of my stuff, and I sent him my proposal or whatever, and he said, "How many Twitter followers do you have?" And I said 250. He said, "Most publishing houses won't talk to you unless you have 10,000 followers." So, because you have, in their mind, you have to have a base to market from, and if you don't have that, they don't feel you have much to offer. So, again, self-publishing is a great way to start. The key is going to be your connections, and honestly, your self-promotion. We don't like doing that. We don't like promoting ourselves. We'll talk about that in a bit, how that's important. But it's not going to be your publishing status when you start out. It's going to be it's going to be your connections and speaking opportunities and self-promotion that gets your message out there. Content. Let's see. We'll pause for a second. Any questions so far? Anybody? Okay. Content. The first thing is capture your thoughts, and we're not going to do a lot on content again because that's the focus is on how to get your project published. Yes.
Just to ask you if you had any comments or thoughts, and one was I've been interested in writing a book for years, and I always thought I should wait until I have something to say.
Yeah.
And that reminds me when you say content.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever gotten to the point where I really have something to say yet, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, and I that's part of it, honestly, is the conviction that you have something important to say is going to be, it's one of the key motivators, really, that's going to get you from, because otherwise you'll put down 20 pages of stuff for 30 and then you just won't finish it out if you don't have the conviction that I've got something important here that needs to be said or needs to be heard. But capture your thoughts is the first thing. When you're in the middle of a project or when you're working on a project, ideas are going to come at you at random times. You have to have a way to capture them, to save them. I still remember one time I had a thought for some idea in the book, and I didn't write it down. And for the last 7 years, I've been trying to remember what it was. Because it was good. It was really, in fact, it would have been a game changer. But, you know, I thought, no, seriously, I wish I would have captured that because it disappeared and I couldn't get it back. And so, yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt your thought, but I was thinking about when you invite speakers, do you even think about their book? You were talking about connections with your books. You know, most of these, you know, Scott Wilson is selling his books through speaking events. Does that even come into your mind when you're inviting speakers? These are people that maybe some of these guys have read or some of these folks have read. Does that come into...
When I'm inviting speakers?
Yeah, when you're inviting speakers.
Yeah, you know, it comes in, I guess, I know that some are bringing books with them. Is that what you mean, or?
Well, I mean, like what you said here was 80% of how you'll sell your books is by speaking.
Yep.
So if that's the case, are you thinking on the other end, if I bring this person in, people are going to know him because maybe they've read his material or her material or so and so? Yeah.
Do you know, you maybe have heard the phrase AG famous. Have you ever heard that? It's like, and what it means is that for us in the AG, this person's famous. You know, Jeffrey Portman can go to Walmart. There's not going to be a person in the building that knows him, but he goes into a church, Jeffrey Portman, or take Mark Batterson. He goes into Walmart, and there might be one person that recognizes him out of 1,000, but he comes in here. When I get speakers for events and men's retreat or whatever, 50+ camp, you have to really shoot for the moon with a speaker to get any real name recognition in a lot of cases. Now, with like the 50+ camp senior adults, that's a little different because they've been around long enough, they know people, they know stories. But for men's retreat, unless I'm getting Jace Robertson or Mark Batterson, it doesn't really matter. Nobody knows who they are. So a lot of them, you know, there'll be instances where they'll say, "Can I bring my book with?" Yeah, absolutely. If you've got if they have a message that I think is important enough to bring them in, I'm going to want their book made available to people for sure. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Was that clear? Or did I answer anything?
Yeah.
Okay. Develop your themes. One neat trick if you're pastoring and you're preaching regularly, honestly, is to use your Sunday mornings as a way to develop your thoughts. How am I going to have the time to write a book? Well, if you have a project in mind that has a scriptural message, use your Sunday mornings to help develop your content. And that's what I would do. John chapter 3, verse 8, it's a part of this wind principle concept. John 3, 6. Jesus says, flesh gives birth to flesh, spirit gives birth to spirit. And he's saying, whatever the input of your life is, that's going to dictate your output. And I would use my Sunday mornings sermons, I would take that topic and I would use my 8 to 10 hours or 24 hours of sermon prep. But I would use my sermon prep time to develop that concept that I was going to use in the book. Because I was like you, I didn't have 10 hours a week to give to a project, but if I could take my 6 to 8 hours of sermon prep and develop a theme I was going to use in the book, then I'm getting value out of both ends there. So, yes, Matt?
I was just going to say, I mean, you look at Mark Batterson, and most of his books have come out of his.
Yeah.
And I even heard him say once that a lot of his, when he first started publishing, it's because he wrote out his messages word for word that they were able to be put into books.
Yes.
Versus an outline and then,
Yep.
and then not having a manuscript.
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
put
And
in book form.
that's one on this convincing proof book. I basically just published my sermons was all it was. I just copy and pasted, and that's how I did that. So yeah, use your sermons, your sermon prep time to develop your themes and thoughts. It's a great way to go. And again, if you have a message important enough to be told, it's something that you'd want to tell on Sunday mornings too. Okay, discover new methods for communicating stuff. And this is a way of, it's kind of a problem-solving idea. And I've actually thought, whenever at the camp, when we're doing our staff meetings and stuff, I'll tell people, what are we? We are problem solvers. That's what we do. We find the problem and we solve it. And I try to encourage each staff member, have that mentality that I'm just here to solve problems. Whenever I see one, I'm going to solve it. And there, I think there's ways of problem solving. We all kind of approach problems the same way. We approach challenges like the same mental pathway, and we don't look at problems from different angles. And so I've thought I would like someday to write a book about problem solving and finding different methods to attack problems and to view problems. I don't have any content, but it sounds like a great book. In fact, I will be signing or selling free copies of that at the end here today. But when I was writing this wind principle, I wasn't sure how to introduce each section of the book. So there's 3 sections, and the idea of it is that there's kind of a key thought that speaks of each section. God takes a child of God, a person born of the Spirit. He takes him from an unimpressive starting point along an unpredictable route to an unexpected destination. And that's your life as a Christian. Unimpressive starting point, unpredictable course to an unexpected destination. And I wasn't sure each one of those are totally different thoughts, lines of thinking. How do I introduce each of those sections? So I had a thought. This book draws heavily on the life of King David, and there's a verse in Samuel. It would be 1 Samuel, where David wants to build a temple, and at 1 Samuel says, "Yeah, go ahead, God is with you." And then he comes back 10 minutes later. He says, "Never mind, God's not with you." Forget what I just said. But Samuel says to him, "The Lord says to you, I took you from the sheepfold, from watching sheep, and I made you shepherd over my people Israel. I took you from an unimpressive starting point, and there was an unpredictable course to an unexpected destination. So I had the thought to introduce each section kind of with a dramatic retelling of periods of David's life. So that's what I did. It's a nonfiction book. It's a spiritually encouraging book. It's all that. But I started it out each section by telling a story, and I'll just read a couple of paragraphs of the beginning. This is section 1, an unimpressive beginning. Everyone in the great dining hall came to attention as King David rose from his designated place at the table and retreated toward an interior stairway within the royal residence. The sun was beginning to set over the city of David as the king emerged from the stairwell to the roof of the palace, as he so often did after the evening meal. I just thought that paragraph could make you think that Bathsheba's right around the corner, couldn't it? That's not what happens. It had been an exciting couple of days for the king, to say the least. The previous evening, he had met with the prophet Nathan, describing his plans for the construction of a grand temple that would serve as a Jewish center of worship. The prophet had given his blessing. Now David looked from his palace toward the northeast. As he did, he could see a cloud of wheat chaff disperse in the wind from the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite. David could envision this location as the ideal site for the temple. It was on that pinnacle that Abraham centuries earlier had prepared to offer his son Isaac as a sacrifice in obedience to God. So I say that to say, just think about what are some different pathways to writing. What are some new methods? We all tend to go along the same line of thinking, and we don't very often get out of that and find new ways. And so discovering new methods. What are new ways of excuse me, I want to write down a note here. What are new ways of kind of tackling problems in writing and developing your thoughts? What are some new ways you can do it? Editing is another step. So you have content, you have editing. We're going to touch on formatting, cover design, and then production, or I should say promotion. Editing. I would just say you have to outsource your editing. You cannot do it yourself. The reason is, if you write a 150-page book, you are going to overlook the same error. You can read that book 15 times. You're going to overlook the same error every single time. You're just not going to catch it all. So I would outsource it. What I would do with mine is I would probably do two edits at least myself, where I would have everything together, and I would do 2 edits myself, where I'm trying to correct as much as I can. And then I would send it actually over to my dad, and he would do an edit also. He would read the whole thing, and I think I would just send him the file, and he would make notes on all the errors he saw. And then I would correct all that. And then there was a lady at our church that was a sharp gal, and I would send her the copy after he had edited, and I would make corrections off of that, and then I would read it again and try to catch any final, and you still make mistakes. Now, the one place that I did not edit was on the cover, and I just read this the other day. An error. I don't want to take time to find it, but I didn't. I probably read the print a dozen times before I published it, but I didn't have anyone else read it, and I made a mistake on there. So you have to outsource your editing. You just will not catch all your mistakes. And so I would involve other people. You don't have to necessarily hire people to edit it. I didn't. I think I maybe gave my dad a copy of the book when I was done.
You didn't give me anything.
See, I didn't even have to pay him that much. But you don't necessarily have to pay people to do it. You can. You can pay people, but I just would go to people that were good readers and writers. In fact, my dad's been spending 42 years correcting my English. Don't end the sentence with a preposition, right? So, so I would always, you have to outsource it. Formatting would be the next step. First, one note, I just say aim for professionalism. That's one thing you cannot shortcut. You cannot be unprofessional. You have to, when I was publishing a book, I would take a book that was published by a real publisher, and I would look at, I would look at the first 10 pages. You know, the copyright page, the accreditations, or that's not the right word, the acknowledgement. I would look at all that stuff, and I would just try to recreate all of that stuff for my project. Make it look exactly as close as you can to a professionally published book, because that's what you want to have. And if people buy it or they pick it up at a table and it looks junky, they're just not going to bother with it. They won't. It won't interest them. So aim for professionalism. One thing I haven't talked about at all, and a little bit of reason for it, I haven't talked about any publishing sites, and there's one reason. I only would work myself with, it's called Kindle Direct Publishing. It's owned by Amazon, and it's when you hit publish, the book immediately goes to Amazon's sales page. You can hit publish, and you can flip over to another page and search in your name, and it's going to pull it up, and it'll say buy, and it'll say this book will be to you in 3 days. So I've never worked with I haven't worked with other publishers in years, since my first one, and so I can't tell you about what the benefits of one versus the other. I think Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing is probably the best, but most of these sites will have tools. Okay, let's forget that note for a moment. When you start a project, go to Kindle Direct Publishing, for example. They will have a template on there. They'll say, what size do you want your book to be? What are you looking for? Okay, I like this size. I want 6.5 by 10. And so you select the template for 6.5 by 10, and they'll give you the exact template, and it'll actually have on that Word file template, it'll have table of contents, copyright page, and then it'll have blank pages in that file for you to fill. So you can actually type straight onto that template your book, and then when you get all the editing done and you have it saved, you can upload that file directly to Kindle Direct Publishing, for example, and you can follow the process through. So I would, when you're in your early stages, you can just open a word processor and type and save. But when you get to the point where you're starting to produce it, you download the template, the appropriate template for the size you want, put your content into there. I think a lot of times I've just typed directly into the template because it allows you to view it right away. Most self-publishing sites are going to allow you to view exactly how the project is going to print. So you upload your file once you're done, and it's going to be a PDF viewer, and it's going to tap on it and it'll flip the pages, and you can see exactly how it's going to lay out, and then you can go back and do the edits necessary. But it's really very user-friendly. It really is. I mean, it takes a long time. It'll take you, I know on the Win Principle, it took me a year to write the book. It took me 12 months to write the book, and it probably took me 4 months to go from, 4 to 6 months to go from the end of writing to where it was in my hand. So it's a long process, but they make it user-friendly. But again, aim for professionalism. Don't cut corners, because the outcome will be hurt. Cover design. This cover design is tough. I don't know how. When I look at these, I put a lot of work into this one, and I still think it kind of looks chintzy. Where did my other one go? I don't know how this one turned out so nice. This is like professional quality. I think this looks so good. And this was my first one I ever did. And somehow I got the right image. It's an image of a fingerprint. I bought it off of a stock photo website for $10, and I created it. They also will have, your self-publishing sites will have templates for your cover design. So You need a 6.5 by 10. Okay, here's your template, and it's going to have what they call a bleed, which is the area outside the cut space, so that they say don't put anything outside of it. I probably would outsource that in the future to somebody, because it is very difficult to do it well, and it really stretches me. Again, I put a lot of work into this one, not that much work into this one. Somehow this turned out great. But cover design is going to draw someone in or turn them away. A lot of sites, such as Kindle Direct Publishing, they will have templates, basically tools for easy cover design. So this one is one where we didn't put any time into creating this. Randy Haney said that this was his bicep. It's not true. It actually was mine. But we found this as a stock photo, and the website, just because of the nature of the project and because we just were wanting to get it out, it wasn't something we put a lot of time in. And they had this utility, this design creator utility, where you drag and drop your picture, type in what you want here, type in what you want here, and then type this in, and you're done. And that's all there was to it. So if you're looking for if you're wanting to create a product that is not necessarily, where you're not as concerned by a high quality cover, you can do it quick with the utilities on some of these sites. So that doesn't have to scare you away. I'll pause for a moment. Any questions? Does anybody wish they hadn't come in here? Oh, hey, Bob. Yeah.
I have two principles I use when I'm working on a book or sermon, and that is this. The first thing I gotta do is get the people's attention.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't get their attention, they don't hear a thing I say. And number two, win their favor.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of examples where I've seen this really work well. Remember Betty Maltz?
No.
She worked at Trinity. Her and her husband Carl worked with Lowell Lundstrom at the Bible College at Trinity. And her first book, she wrote 11 books, but her first book was entitled My Glimpse of Eternity.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, did that grab my attention. And the book content really won my favor. She sold 750,000 copies
Wow.
of that.
Yeah.
And then Dan Johnson, I just love his stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the book he wrote, When You Ask Why, It's Okay to Ask, that was first of all published in hardcover.
Mm-hmm.
And when the jets hit the towers, Sam's Club and Walmart got a hold of his book. I don't know how that happened, but they republished that book by the tens of thousands, put them on their shelves.
Wow.
Because number one, it got their attention. Number two, it won their favor.
Right.
Everything I do is based on those two
Mm-hmm.
principles.
Excellent. Thank you. That's very good. Very good insight. Okay, I guess I do talk about Kindle Direct as a Touch. These are paid services that you can use, so you don't have to do it all yourself at all. But if you're working on a budget that restricts you on some of these, you can do it all yourself. But you can outsource all of this. I've never paid for any of the stuff I've done. I've never paid for any of these steps just because the budget for the project prohibited that. So, but you can pay for each of those services through, for example, Kindle Direct, and there's other self-publishing sites that will allow the same. Copyright. The first time on my discipleship, the first one I ever did actually book was my discipleship book actually, and I didn't publish it through a traditional publishing site. I actually printed it all myself, and then I took it to an office store in town, and I had them bind it with that plastic binding. So that was actually the first one I did, my discipleship book. And I thought, I gotta copyright this. So what do you do if you need legal services? You go to LegalZoom, right? I go to LegalZoom.com and I filed for a copyright, and I paid them $120, and I'm still trying to pay that off on the project. I'm just joking, but I thought I need to copyright this, and so I went through the legal steps and I copyright. The fact is if you're the owner of the product, you don't have to file anything. You can just claim the copyright. So you in the early, the copyright page of the book, just say copyright Sean Tayon, and you own the copyright. You don't have to pay for that either, but you can, but it's not.
So did you send any copies into the Library of Congress?
I did I think so, on the first one. Yep. They sent it back. No, I'm just our library's full. We don't want your copy. But,
Is there a reason for that?
For
Sending it to the...
Well, I had totally forgotten about that, but I think I probably did send it in. I don't know for sure, but ISBN is another note. It stands for International Standard Book Number, and in every single book that you'll ever buy, if it's been published in a way that people are wanting to sell it or distribute it through any traditional means, they're going to have, it's either a 10 or a 13-digit number, and it's just a unique identifier. When I've written my books and trying to produce my content, and I need to cite stuff, sometimes I would type in on certain search sites the ISBN number to get details about the publishing or whatever. But it's a unique identifier for each book. Self-publishing sites will provide you with a free ISBN, so you don't have to pay for it. Again, self-publishing can be totally free. They'll provide you with a free one, but the ISBN provider will then be listed as the publisher of the book. So, like on this one, Convincing Proof, this is just a screenshot from Amazon for this one book. And if you go to the product details, you'll see CreateSpace is listed as the publisher. CreateSpace was the website, and then they renamed it Kindle Direct Publishing. So it's the same, but it was renamed. But the publisher of this is CreateSpace International publishing platform. Even though I'm the one that published it, they're listed as a publisher because they provided the ISBN. Okay, so just a note. When I did the Win Principle, I wanted myself to be listed as the publisher. So there's another way of doing that, and that is you can basically create your own publishing house. Now, I suppose, if you wanted legal protections and whatnot, you would have to file for whatever to create this. But you actually can just say, I'm going to create a publishing house called Aufenkamp Publishing, and I'm just going to name that as my publishing company, and then I'm going to buy my own ISBN. So that's what if you want to be listed, or if you want your own company to be listed as a publisher, you have to provide your own ISBN. And when I did it, it was $99 to get my own ISBN. Bowker.com, Bowker is the company that provides ISBNs to all books in America. So you go Bowker, and you can buy an ISBN. It'll say, what's your publishing house? And you just type in Aufenkamp Publishing or whatever you want it to be. And so what I did is I created a publishing house called Destination Resources. And I envisioned that I would maybe be publishing more books under that. So I created a little, I'll pass them around a little bit, but I created a little logo for Destination Resources, which is on the side binding, and it lists, if you go to Bowker.com and you search Destination Resources, it's going to probably still list my Valley City address as the address for that publishing company. But by buying it myself, I was able to it listed me as my company, if you will, Destination Resources, as the publisher. And I did that because I wanted it to I wanted to have more control over the appearance and so forth, and so that's an option that you can take advantage of. So then you list your own company or yourself as the publisher. Okay. I created a Facebook page for Destination Resources, and look at that, 66 followers. That's a cousin of mine right there.
67 likes.
Kelly Beckstrand right there. Look at that. So anyway, that's some stuff you can do like through the process. Some of it's not necessary. A couple other notes, some additional tools, draft copies. So when you get to the end of your project and you're ready to get the product in hand, the first thing you'll do is buy a draft copy, and it's just a editable. It's not something that's going to be available to anyone else. You buy it just for yourself. You look over the formatting. You maybe do another edit. They're so difficult because I'm so tired of reading my own message over and over again. But don't cut corners on that. But you get draft copies. Another thing I've done is endorsements. And I haven't done endorsements. I've sought endorsements. So on this one, I actually sent a digital copy to Superintendent Wood, George Wood, and he very generously got back to me within just a few days and wrote a paragraph-long endorsement for it.
Wow.
And I have that at the top of the book there. And why do you do that? It just lends credibility to the book. It lends professionalism to the book. It communicates something when you look at the book and you see, oh my goodness, George Wood endorsed that book. And so I got one from Dan Johnson, David Ravenhill. And so endorsements, they're a good tool. Again, it just communicates professionalism and it adds credibility to what you've done. Distribution, how do you get it out? Well, Kindle Direct, again, it gives you immediate listing on Amazon. It's really nice. There are there's an option in there, it's called expanded distribution options. And what it does is when you select that you want these expanded distribution options, you will go to your product page on Amazon and you'll see, okay, there's my book, The Win Principle, and then at the bottom it'll say available from other sellers. And it'll say, I mean, you can hit publish today, and 5 minutes later it'll say used $9.99 or brand new $10.99 or whatever. It'll list some expanded distribution options that basically just I think it just gives the appearance. I remember, I'll say this, I remember when I first got a checking account, or someone said at one time, when you first get a checking account, start at 1,000, because it lends credibility to your ability to cover your checks. And it's kind of the same thing, these expanded distribution options. When someone goes to Amazon and they see, oh my goodness, well, there's 7 different options for these books used, or from these different booksellers. And it's just a way that Amazon does it that adds credibility to your project, and I would take advantage of that. Kindle version is very easy. It's a different formatting, so there'll be a template you download for Kindle formatting, but my books are on Kindle also. Utilize your connections as best you can. When I got done with the Win Principle, I called Pastor Jeff Wiedemeyer. I said, Pastor Jeff, I've written a book. Would you let me come preach on it? And he said, sure. So he invited me for a Sunday night, and I preached the message, and he allowed me to sell some books. I didn't sell 70 copies, but I tried to utilize connections. I emailed several other churches, and a couple others, and they declined, but that was okay. But utilize your connections. Utilize social media. I would try to schedule, I would have one thing I did on the Win Principle, I found a site that could create the appearance of a 3D picture of the book. And so it was something I paid probably $20 for, and all you do is, it says, upload upload the cover of your book. So you hit upload. How many pages is it? Okay, 144. And it creates a 3D rendering that is actually rotatable potentially, but you can get a snapshot of that. And so I would, on Facebook, I could scroll back now if I wanted to, but it would, I would have a 3D rendering of the book with a quote from the book and I'd have a social media post that I would schedule and put out. So use social media. I created a website that I actually had, I sold copies of the book on the website, which was fun. Actually, it was interesting. One Sunday morning, I was getting ready for church, and I got this, bing, you sold a copy of your book. Came to my email. Oh, cool. It said, Dusty Doll. That's neat. I've never met him before. So I go to church, and there's this tall, redheaded guy, and never seen him before. And I went up to introduce myself. He says, hi, my name is Dusty Doll. I said, you just bought my book this morning, didn't you? He said, yeah. So I said, well, I'll save you the shipping. And I went and gave him a copy from the office. But, you know, a website is nice, but it's like a church website. Unless you're updating it regularly and creating new content, it's got marginal value. Now, you know, if you're almost a better option is to, you know, do your postings on social media and always link to your website every single time you post. But I started doing a blog for a while. It just didn't get any traction, so it's hard to stay motivated when you're not getting traction on that. You know, for a while during this process, especially when that guy told me you need to have 10,000 followers on Twitter to get any interest from traditional publishing houses. I try to play the Twitter game and, you know, post things and like things, and you get just a few. Twitter's basically useless to me. I post something and my two brothers are the only ones that ever see it, right? Well, just the three of us, we just have a circle where we like each other's posts, and that's it. But I got a little discouraged, and I just determined at one point, I realized I'm never likely going to have a following of 10,000 people on Twitter. So I just determined, you know what, I'm going to write books when I feel the message needs to be heard, and if God wants to take it and spread it out, then he can do that. But I'm not going to stress trying to build my social media. That's just a little too fake for me, so I don't know.
Amen.
That's hard. That's hard to get into. Yes?
So does the Kindle version, does that cost any extra, or it just requires more work for formatting?
Just a little bit of extra work, no cost.
Okay.
Yeah, you just put it in a different, you're gonna upload a different size for your cover, you know, different formatting for your cover, different formatting for the content. But, and actually they are gonna ask you to hyperlink from your glossary or your index to each chapter page. Mm-hmm. So you're gonna go to your index of your chapters, and you're gonna create a hyperlink to the page in that file so that people can click on it and go right to that page. Yes?
Are you gonna talk about using something like Audible?
I never did that. I
just know that some that aren't in Audible are on my Kindle, and the Kindle has the capacity to read it to you.
Okay. You know, I never looked into that, and I honestly haven't produced anything in 7 years, so some of that stuff, options may have improved by then, but I've never looked into that. Look for speaking opportunities, and that's a key way for distribution. Here's just some notes on revenue. First of all, there's no reason that you should not be paid for the work you do, okay? Just put that in your heart and mind. An appropriate price communicates you've produced something of value. Okay, you put a price on your product, and if it's appropriate, you're telling people my product has value, and they're going to give it value if you attach value to it. When someone purchases something, they're more likely to read it. Really, I mean, I can pass out this book to every one of you or a handful of you, and most of you're just going to put it on a shelf. That's okay. But if you buy it, you've invested something, and you're probably going to give time to read it. Years ago, I was wanting to get healthier. I wanted to get into the gym, and I could have said I'll pay $20 a month, and I probably would not go to the gym. But I did a year membership, and I paid $240 because I knew if I put that kind of money into it, I'm going to get to the gym. So having that type of value into it made sure I followed through. Here's some notes. And here again is the value of marketing yourself. If I purchase the Win Principle Direct from Kindle Direct Publishing, I can get it in my door at $3 a copy. Okay, very cheap. I can sell it at $12 a copy, very cheap, and I make $9. That's really good revenue on something. If I list it on Amazon, which it is, it's listed at $12.99. If it sells, they're gonna send me $4.88. Okay, so you might think we gotta get sales online. I gotta get sales online. Yeah, I mean you want to have it there. People are gonna look there, but you're just not getting the revenue if you sell it yourself. John?
Excuse me.
So I've gotten into the Amazon publishing as well. My question is, how quickly did you start to see the money come in?
Well, as soon as,
How quickly were you paying?
yeah, it's pretty quick.
Is it?
I think as soon as you purchase, as soon as a book is purchased, pretty quick you'll see the money from it. Kindle, another thing Kindle does, if you make your book available for Kindle Unlimited, which is a subscription based, people pay it, and then they can read as much as they want. You'll get paid whenever some people read some pages of your book. And so I still have it on Amazon. About a month ago, someone purchased a copy, and so I got $4.88 from it. It's pretty special.
Do you know what you get paid for Kindle Unlimited?
It's based. So they make available Kindle Unlimited. They will send out an email and they'll say this month there is $13 million, or whatever the number is. More than that. There's $35 million of Kindle Unlimited money being distributed, and they distribute it proportionately on how many pages are read. So I've actually created a program on my computer that just is cha-ching, cha-ching. But
How funny.
I've got it listed, I think, on Kindle. I want to say for $5, and the revenue would be $2.50 for a purchase of the whole book. Again, it's the amount for Kindle Unlimited is totally based on how many pages people read of your book and how big the pool is for that month. So,
I got a question for you.
yeah.
Is there any complication if you self-publish, like you go through Amazon or one of these companies, and then let's say a professional publisher wants to buy your book?
You own the copyright.
So even though it says published by.
Yeah, you own the copyright. You can do whatever you want with. Then now that maybe is one benefit of buying your own ISBN. You own it then, but you own the copyright. You can do whatever you want with it. You do. There's no, because even when I've published and I've used a provided ISBN, I've never interacted with anybody on that project. It's all automated. So you own the copyright. You can do whatever you want with the product. We'll wrap up here in 5. Self-promotion. Is your book any good? Is your message important? No one's going to receive it if you don't self-promote. You have to be willing. Swallow your pride. I know that sounds contrary, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
If I tell you swallow your pride and self-promote yourself, that sounds opposite. But that's what it is. If you're too proud to promote yourself, no one's going to read your book. So just swallow it, promote yourself. Some people might say, why are you promoting yourself? I got an important message. I got to tell people. And I need to promote it to get it out there. I always like this text from Jesus, and we always are a little unsure what to make of it. But he says the sons of the world are wiser in their generation than the sons of the light. And I always think, Dr. Alexander last year at family camp, he made one statement about human resources. He said we're always going to be poor at human resources as pastors because we always give more grace than we should. Or someone in a secular world is like, you're fired, get out of here. I don't need this.
Yeah.
And we are so inclined to give grace.
Yeah.
We're always going to be kind of poor at it. And that's, I think, what Jesus is talking about. And I think in terms of self-promotion and affixing value to your books, the world, they're never going to give away their product. Why not? Because there's value to it. There's value to it. And so they're going to affix a value that they think people are going to pay, and they're going to sell it. And when people put skin in the game, they immediately affix value to it. So you have to self-promote if you want your message to go out. And is that the end of it? I think it is. Okay, any questions here? Last couple minutes. Great, answer them all. Good deal. I do have some copies of The Win Principle. I'll sell for $10 if you want. Thank you so much. Have a great day.